And again, he will be able to break that world record. A lot of people talk about Berlin, and when you think about that course, it is a flat course. So it makes it a little bit easy for these athletes to be able to compete and run, but not the easiest, because you will agree they must put in some work. But at the same time, a lot of conversations about the shoe that Kipchoge will be using. And if we've been following, we know it is a third edition, which they're saying it is a mix of the first and also the second edition of that particular shoe. I will leave it to you to be able to know what is special with the shoe that he will be using this time out. So we wish him the level best. Remember, Berlin Marathon will be on the cards on 24th of this very month. It will be a Sunday, so he will try as much as possible to see if he will be able to be the victor. Now let's talk about something different altogether, and this is the world of football. In the country, you know, we have the second edition of the Africa Football Summit that is happening in a hotel here in Nairobi, and different football stakeholders are saying that they will try as much as possible to see that at least we will be able to make the right frame to be able to build football in this country. Ivy, you've been following up what is happening on that end, and I know there might be a lot of promise, and if you agree, then if we follow what these stakeholders are saying, maybe, just maybe, we can be able to build football in this country.
And now I'll also speak to Brian Wesala, who is the CEO of Football Foundation and also one of the organizers. Welcome, Brian. Welcome to KTN. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Talk to us about the state of football in Africa.
I think the state of football in Africa, for me, it holds a lot of potential, but it always feels like that's where it stops really at potential, and we never really get down to discuss how can we actualize that potential, and by that I mean from economic, social perspective. So you'll find in a lot of forums, Africans always saying, "Oh, we have a lot of talent, we have a lot of youths who are playing football," but what really does it mean for these young people, or for the countries, or for the continent? And that's why, as the Football Foundation for Africa, we saw it fit to organize the Africa Football Business Summit. Now, in our second edition, second day, we've had a very good morning, of course, with the president of the Football Uganda Association, talking a lot around governance and what should be done to improve the relationship between international federation, in this case FIFA, governments and our member associations. Also what we need to do in order to build the business, which is invest in infrastructure. The how of that is what is very difficult, but we can't address these issues conclusively in summits like this. But it's important that we have started to talk about them, and then we have follow-ups that we hope we can now share with the various stakeholders, our governments, CAF, FIFA, the Africa Union, the private sector. How do we re-engage the private sector really so that they can invest in the football space, in the sports space, to build an industry to what it's supposed to be?
And Brian, in your view, why are African clubs not making a lot from transfers? And what do you think are some of the things that the clubs could do to ensure that there's enough revenue coming into the clubs?
I mean, when it comes to the transfer, to the football transfer market, again, it just boils down to how do you value yourself as a club or as a football organization. You find that our leagues are very weak, and that's one of the topics we have addressed this morning, which means the compensation or the incentive for players to stay in Africa is very low. So our players are always desperate to move abroad to different countries, and when you move with this point of desperation, then you always get the lowest price, if I can say that. If I'm desperate to move out of Africa, the person I meet will give me the least that they can, because they know where I'm coming from. There's not much you're earning, but if we can try and see, so what do? We need to improve the quality of opportunities here in Africa, and that's something that our panelists have addressed. We need to strengthen our leagues economically, try and find ways in which you can build financial muscle to compensate our players so that they're more or less comfortable here. And if they move to the developed sports economies where, of course, opportunities are... there is a lot of opportunity, then it should be out of choice, and they should be able to command more in terms of the transfer fees. But another area we also need to look at is from a policy level, in terms of when these players are moving, how much automatically is redirected back into the continent, to our federation, into our clubs. And in this case, we talk about the what you call the solidarity payment mechanism, and what you call the other one, the training compensation. You know, some of these percentages you see being put out there are very low, especially for Africa. And if you look at the tiered system that FIFA uses, African clubs are usually classified, I think, BOC. I'm not sure of the classification, but that means that players that are moving from Africa command lower percentages of these compensations that have been automatically or regulated within the system. So this is a policy thing, and yesterday we were discussing as Africa, we also need to sit together, establish what's our value, document some of our proposals so that we can take this to the stakeholders. In this case, to FIFA, I tell them, you know, this is law for this and this reason. And if you increase this is the impact it will have on the continent in terms of bringing in more resources. We also need to engage organizations like the AU, the International Labour Organization, because this is labor moving.
Why has the FKF and maybe Ministry of Sports strongly been ignored during this summit?
I don't know why you say they have been ignored. Maybe you have information that I don't, because they haven't. We started our engagement publicly in April, and we invited all stakeholders, government, the federation, the private sector. But it is what it is. You have to work with those who have accepted the invitation to engage. And today we have Ministry of Sports represented here. They were represented at the lounge as well. Unfortunately, we don't have the FKF represented here. Something we can discuss after. But as I've mentioned earlier, we have the FUFA president with us here. So we are engaging federations. Believe me, we have sent out invitation to all the federations in the region and to a select outside of the region, recognizing what the football landscape is like in Africa.
Okay, lastly, before I let you go, Brian, why do you think African federations don't really strongly also monetize their leagues?
I think that's our federations face numerous challenges. I'll stick to one just for the sake of the interview. For me, it's about capacity. You go into most of our federations, or you talk to people in our federations, we just don't have the right capacity. And this is historic. I think you've heard what people are saying in terms of how African countries, you know, they're talking about government, but for me, it's our countries as a whole, or the continent, we still look at football sports as leisure. Nothing wrong with that. Football is leisure. It's something to be enjoyed. But on the other side, football has also developed into a business. But what has happened in Africa is that we have not developed the capacity to manage this business. We have continued to focus on the playing side, which is good. That needs to be developed. But nobody is talking about how do we grow a sustainable business in Africa. When you look at sports, look at football, it has the two sides. There's the sporting side and then there's the business side. The sporting side will have ups and downs. There's losses, there's bad spells, there's all this. But we need to look at the business side, which no matter what happens on the sporting side, that needs to be consistent and needs to be consistently growing. So we need to build the capacity through education, through platforms like this, to start focusing on building the economic side of football.
Thank you, Brian, for your time.
Thank you very much.
Well, that was the CEO of Football Foundation for Africa's Brian Wesala.
So Brian Wesala there is saying that